All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely break down this monolithic, kind of one-size-fits-all idea of the criminal. Usually when we hear that word, our minds jump straight to a very specific, stereotypical image. But in the real world, well, behavior is incredibly nuanced. We're going to map out the true spectrum of offenders, literally ranging from a split-second bad decision all the way up to massive corporate syndicates. So, let's get started.
So what does a criminal actually look like? I want to challenge whatever preconceived notion just popped into your head. If you're imagining a street-level offender or, a masked burglar, you're really only seeing a tiny fraction of the picture. We need to shift away from those standard assumptions, because criminal behavior is a vast, escalating spectrum. It ranges from a completely ordinary person making a terrible split-second decision all the way up to wealthy individuals wearing tailored suits in corporate boardrooms.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the spectrum of crime. Second, opportunity and habit. 3, crime is a profession. 4, crimes in the boardroom. 5, organized criminal enterprises. And finally, connecting the typologies.
Section 1. The spectrum of crime, situational lapses, and the occasional offender. Early criminologists were absolutely fascinated by everyday people who simply drift into crime under very special, isolated circumstances. Routine activity theory brilliantly illustrates exactly how this happens in 3 simple steps. First, an unguarded opportunity presents itself. Second, there's a motivation, like sudden financial pressure or immense stress. And third, the crime occurs. The occasional offender has zero interest in a criminal career. They literally just act when a sudden pressure perfectly aligns with an easy opportunity.
Section 2. Opportunity and habit. The cycle of recidivism.
But what happens when it's not just an isolated incident? Enter the habitual criminal. This is someone trapped in a relentless cycle of recidivism. Arrest, release, reoffending. Why does this happen? Well, leading scholars point right to our environment. Differential association theory and social learning theory argue that criminal behavior isn't innate at all, it's learned. Habitual criminals are often trapped because they continually associate with others who normalize lawbreaking. Social learning actually becomes the very trap that solidifies a habitual criminal career.
Section 3. Crime as a profession. The livelihood of lawbreaking.
Now we're no longer talking about desperation or habit. We are talking about the professional criminal, someone who approaches crime as a specialized 9-to-5 job. The absolutely crucial element here is expertise. Professional criminals rely heavily on intense planning and networks, and get this, they actually avoid violence whenever possible, mostly because violence attracts police attention. A really fascinating example comes from the classic work The Professional Thief, which was based on a real-life offender operating under the alias Schick Conwell. Conwell revealed this hidden world of expert burglars and fraud specialists who viewed their crimes simply as a highly skilled, well-oiled trade.
Section 4. Crimes in the boardroom. The pivot to power.
Okay, prepare for a massive paradigm shift. We are leaving the streets entirely and entering high society to examine white-collar crime. Historically, society operated under this incredibly flawed belief that serious crime was confined strictly to the poor or marginalized. But Edwin H. Sutherland completely shattered that myth. White-collar crimes are illegal acts committed by respected elites. We're talking about occupational jargon coming to life: insider trading, accounting fraud, bribery, tax evasion, and embezzlement.
Let's look at Sutherland's groundbreaking exact definition from 1949. He called it a crime committed by a person of respectability and high social status in the course of his occupation. The weapon of choice here isn't a gun or a crowbar, it's high social status and respectability itself. The trust we place in these individuals is exactly what allows them to commit serious, devastating offenses right under our noses.
Let's see how this builds into an even larger issue. First, we have white-collar crime, which primarily benefits the individual offender, like a rogue executive doing insider trading to go buy a yacht. But then we have corporate crime. This refers to illegal acts committed for organizational benefit. Think of a company systematically engaging in environmental pollution, unsafe product manufacturing, or price fixing just to boost the corporate bottom line. The scale of harm here escalates exponentially, affecting thousands, sometimes literally millions of people.
Section 5. Organized criminal enterprises. Crime as a corporation.
And this brings us to the climax of our scale: structured groups that engage in continuing criminal enterprises for massive profit and power.
Leading scholars define organized crime by several terrifying corporate-like traits. They operate with a strict hierarchy, utilize systemic corruption to protect themselves, operate in total secrecy, ensure continuity to outlive their current leadership, and possess a relentless profit orientation. Whether it's a traditional mafia family, a transnational drug cartel, or a modern cybercrime syndicate, they function exactly like ruthless Fortune 500 companies.
Section 6. Connecting the Typologies, your CSS examination cheat sheet.
We've covered incredible ground today. So for any criminology students or CSS candidates tuning in, consider this your ultimate cheat sheet. An offender's exact typology is defined by three things: their motivation, repetition, and scale. The occasional criminal offends sporadically due to a situational opportunity. The habitual criminal is driven by learned behavior, repeatedly reoffending. The professional criminal views crime as a career with deep expertise. Moving up the ladder of power, the white-collar criminal leverages occupational status for personal gain, while the corporate offender commits systematic misconduct to benefit their company. And finally, organized crime operates as a highly structured syndicate enterprise. If you're tested on this, remember to distinguish these categories not just by the act itself, but by the intent and organizational structure behind it.
Let's end with a pretty provocative question. How should society punish these vastly different typologies? Does a teenager who commits an occasional theft under immense situational strain deserve a harsher reality than a respected executive whose corporate crimes pollute a city's water supply? I'll leave you to ponder whether our current justice systems truly and adequately address this massive spectrum, from occasional drifters all the way up to untouchable corporate syndicates. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.